Culture swap.
Brief.
Swap my culture.
Hooray! We did X-Men Origins Wolverine because Jason and Lee made us. Now we're going to find out why.
I'm going to give it a spoiler warning. If any of you haven't seen X-Men Origins Wolverine and want to go see it but haven't watched it yet,
No.
this is going to have spoilers.
That's
if you're
the
that person, email us because that would be fascinating to talk to you.
I mean,
They want us to spoil this. Come on now.
who even cares what's spoiled?
I just feel like I have to give the warning in case there is someone
What
out
is
there.
the spoiler? Like, Wolverine loses his memory? Like, the thing that they
that is a good
sets
point.
up his character in the other films?
What would the spoiler of...
His girlfriend
Can you
dies.
spoil this?
That
Does anything happen in this film?
all the characters they introduce don't exist in the other films, not give away that they're probably not going to be in this one. I mean, there's nothing. There's
Holy
really
shit!
nothing.
I guess the only spoiler is her dying at the end.
Yeah.
Or did she? Is she another hypnotic
Oh god.
fucking projection? Who the fuck cares? Well, do you know what? I think there were plans. She had like an audio log in the Wolverine. So I don't know if that was supposed to be an Easter egg to say she's alive and he just doesn't know, or who the fuck cares, really? I mean, this is to me. This is to kind of start us off. X-Men Origins is a wholly separate, standalone film that lives in a bubble onto itself, that only when I rewatched X-Men 2 in the last couple of months did I even realize it was trying to connect to a bunch of shit that happens in that film. But I didn't realize that at the time.
Because he goes back to that like treatment facility, doesn't he, in X2?
Yeah, that's what happens. And you also get to see Stryker's son, who is like the main MacGuffin of X-Men 2. So there's like a whole sort of working universe that they're trying to build to say yes, this is definitely the working prequel to the Bryan Singer films and that one Brett Ratner film, which nobody. I mean, I was out at the time, I think, so I have no idea what the fuck, even if they considered adding in that lore into this film.
It is sort of fascinating that this film sort of does have its own little place in the universe, in that every other film has now cut it out of it and just been like, no, that didn't happen. So
exactly.
It's like this film that was like, we're going to carry on, and then the moment it came out, they were like, actually, no, that didn't happen. Forget we've made that film.
2 years later, or 1 year later, whenever First Class came out, it was immediate, like everything about the timeline that Origins didn't happen.
Well, wasn't
it's
the
amazing.
original plan that this was going to be like the start of a new kind of series where they do X-Men Origins for other characters?
Yes.
Okay.
They were going to do Magneto, and then that got dropped
Storm.
and tied into X-Men First Class.
Okay.
That's right.
Boom.
And,
I just did film knowledge.
Well done.
Exactly. And the thing with X-Men Origins, even though it got all the money in the world that it required, critics hated it so much and fans were not approving enough that they said, let's just take that Magneto film and slowly incorporate that into a far superior film that Matthew Vaughn is working on. And that's how we got my favorite X-Men film, First Class. So, I mean, out of this in two separate entries in the X-Men series, one after the other, I got two of my favorite films on two separate sides of the scales. Because I think First Class is just like this pure action, straightforward comic book through and through feel of a film that is just so much fun from start to finish and has really memorable moments all the way through. And Wolverine is like that upside down, where it's true, all of those statements are true, but all of them are wrong at the same time. So I don't know what I would love to say I had a huge reason, and I do have a thing that I could help us structure our discussion around if you want, and pitch in on this, because it's something I've been thinking about for years. Because I think this time I watched the film for this show was the first time I watched it sober. So, it was far harder to watch than I ever remember it being. But it also helped me try to piece together what has been my couple of year long aspiration now, which was to make a drinking game out of X-Men Origins Wolverine. And so the best part about a drinking game is you get to make up rules.
Yeah.
So I instead of my usual preparation for like what we would do with Atlantic Screen Connection is that we would delve in so deep and to the point where you hate film, in Liam's case, and actually it puts you off film further because you've explained thoroughly how a film is supposed to be good and that therefore makes it worse.
Yep.
Forgoing that, I instead pieced together rules of a drinking game that are basically failed criticisms and also highlights of the film, collections of moments and quotes that I just put together, and that was going to serve as my contribution to this conversation. But I wanted to say it out first, that I wanted to open the floor and say maybe if we wanted to go to other people, like giving your opinions of the film in general, and then thinking about rules that you could add to the game as we went along. That could be a little fun little running game, if at all possibly possible.
Yeah, no, I'm down. That sounds... I can't believe... That's awesome that you made a drinking game. I wish I'd had the drinking game when I watched the film.
Yeah,
but...
that's... I've been drinking each and every time. That was kind of a game, but the game of life, but or coping. But no, I always saw little patterns and shit throughout the film, and my favorite moments, and I thought, God, if you got a bunch of people here and just, like a punch bowl between them, Jesus Christ, you could kill a man on the shit that you could come up with for this drinking game. And I the 3 or 2 and a bit pages of rules I have for the game so far, asterisks, lets me know that yes, indeed, a man would never make it through this game without dying. So I don't know if what ways you want to maybe just talk about general impressions first, and then maybe kind of
that works.
Spin into. So I think it's pretty clear that I love this film. I have no recollection of the first time I watched it. It definitely wasn't in cinema. I don't know what... I think the first time I watched it, I also hated it for all the reasonable reasons you're supposed to hate it, which is that if you really like the X-Men films, which I did, even with all their faults, I mean, I still like the third one, which is terrible. And especially in and around that time, leading up to First Class, X-Men films just had we were on a shaky downward trend for a little while there, but I was still on board. I still loved the X-Men as characters, and it's still true. Their latest film the Apocalypse film is one of my guilty pleasures of 2016, as is Jason's. But I don't know if I imagine I didn't like it at first because of all the reasonable reasons. It's one of the worst scripted stories anyone has ever cobbled together. Dialogue, plot points, how it ties into the lore that it seems to want to distance itself for, the way it's shot, the way it's edited, the CGI, the overdramatic soundtrack, just pretty much every element of it. It's kind of like the worst.
Yeah.
But then, somewhere between the first viewing and the second viewing, I developed something called taste. It was an acquired taste, and it was for just really quite high-budget, terrible films. And my perspective on the film entirely flipped around. I think it's because I got distanced from the X-Men franchise over time. Yeah. I allowed myself to grow up a little, and with that came maturity. And with maturity came laughter. So I could see the film for what it really should have been from start to finish, which is kind of like a Room-esque disaster that just makes you laugh from start to finish and just how terrible it is. And that every figment of it fails. And that's what makes it all the more impressive, because it's hard to get so much money and so much talent in one place and just fuck it up so hard.
Fumble the ball.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like fumbling a nuke.
That's what always surprises me about these big budget films, because the amount of people that have to okay bad ideas before they get made.
Yeah.
I'm just like, how does just someone not just go, should we do this?
That's what I mean. If you look into the production of it, it's very telling. Like, they obviously greenlit it on concept alone. Hugh Jackman had a huge hand in not just production, where he put his own money into it, but also clearly in directing what everybody else's job was via that production. You hear he has not only strong opinions of what everybody does, but he clearly had hands in every pocket to kind of make sure he was catering to something, which kind of like warning signs, because I don't know if actors that maybe leave people's other jobs. I mean, producers already get a bad rap as it is, but then you have your own job, and now you're a producer. It's worrying just because you understand your character doesn't really mean you understand storytelling. But on top of that, and maybe this is due to the pressure applied from several production insights and stuff like that, you know, who had the money and where and who was pressuring who. But the script, it started principal photography without the final script, you know, and so they were literally updating scenes day to day, trying to catch up with the production that had not only been greenlit, but greenlit so far in advance that they'd done pre-production, got most of the shit together, and worked straight into not having anything cohesive to tie it to. So that explains so much of the problem, because you can tell from the dialogue that so much of it sounds like it was written off the cuff of a sleeve or a scrunched up coffee napkin. Where it's like, and you will say, did you just call me Blob? Like, it's God, like, no, he just called him Bub, but you know, that's the best we could do in the short circumstance to how they end up working in this Blob Wolverine fight scene that the nerds want. You know, it's shit like that, where they clearly, like, they had so much to cater to and so little time to work on a functioning script that it feels exactly like every 5-10 minutes it's a different film with equally poor writing each and every time. It's kind of like an anthology to itself, and it's really special that way, I think. But I mean that's my general oversight. So if somebody wants to take it from there,
I have my thoughts from when I first watched it on May 31st, 2014.
Wow.
Where I said I was rather apprehensive about X-Men Origins Wolverine, since it generally gets a pretty negative reception. Perhaps my low expectations helped, because I actually didn't really mind this. I mean, it's not great, but it's not much worse than X-Men The Last Stand. It just requires the brain to be switched off and any previous conceptions regarding these characters to be completely disregarded, which is a shame but hardly surprising. I have no idea why Will.i.am is in this movie.
I love that you had to refer to your letterbox once more.
Yeah.
Like, it's so relevant to our own conversation.
I heard about Letterboxd like 6 months ago.
Yeah, I need a life.
So you were pretty middling to high on it.
Yeah. In
the wake of removal from context and crushingly low expectations.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting watching it, and I said to Kat, this came out a year after The Dark Knight, which
Jesus.
I kind of feel like
that's what I mean. That can't help things, right?
Yeah, I feel like with comic book movies, you have like before Dark Knight and after Dark Knight, and it's.
Oh yeah, the early adapters as well were just the worst.
Yeah,
like now my film is the next edgiest film. We gotta spin back around and make it a Batman film.
Yeah,
that explains a lot about how the tone is not good.
I mean, yeah, I was reading like the IMDb trivia that said the initial script was meant to be R-rated, and Hugh Jackman was like, "Nah, we can make this PG-13." So, well, maybe this could have been like, you know, Logan, what, 8 or 9 years before Logan happened, but no.
I've got a feeling even if they'd let them do the R-rated version, it probably wouldn't make it much better. I mean, admittedly, you get a couple of scenes in the R-rated version where like Wolverine cuts off an arm, but the rest of it is still going to be they sew up Deadpool's mouth and make him a teleporting ninja.
See, I remember when like I'd forgotten watching this, and I'd seen it like online and stuff. People being like, "Oh yeah, Deadpool with laser eyes," and I'd forgotten how they got to that point. But within like the logic of the film, it kind of makes sense.
The problem with it is that I come from this film. I come from a place of like I had read Wolverine Origins, the actual story, which is one of my favourite Wolverine stories ever. I love it.
God, you poor bastard.
I love it. It's great. I think Origins was so cool. So I came into this film being like, oh man, they've adapted it. And what this film does very cleverly is it tricks you by showing you that first scene, which is pretty much ripped from the graphic novel. And I was like, this film, they're doing it. They're doing Origins. And then it literally jumps to Vietnam. And I'm like, oh, okay, they've skipped a lot of Origins, but they're doing the second part of Origins. That's Vietnam. Then they're out of Vietnam, and I was like, oh no, this film's not doing Origins at all. This film is lying. And then at the end, they have the audacity to be like, also, we're going to ruin this other comic book character. We've already fucked up Origins, but we'll drag Deadpool into it. It's just unforgivable to me.
That's scathingly accurate, and also hilarious, because it brings up one of my my favorite rules in the drinking game. Yeah. So you have to take a drink every time Logan starts a new life. So I can summarize exactly how many new lives Logan starts right here. There is he starts with the wars. That's his first new life.
Yeah.
Then there's Vietnam, his second new life. Then there's Canadian Lager. Then there's Weapon X. Then he runs from that and he becomes Superman. With the Kents, and then they die, so he goes into revenge mode, and then he becomes sad Wolverine once his wife reveals that she's betrayed him this entire time, and then about 2 minutes later he becomes revenge mode again because I don't know, he literally went back on the thing he said he would not do, and then he became memoryless. So all in all, that is 4, 8, 10 drinks throughout your night. Right there and then. Jason, that's your segue in.
Oh, well, I like that you pointed that out, the 10 different lives, because it ties into what I have to say a little bit later about multiple personalities and PTSD. So it'll be interesting to talk about that. My first initiation to this one is kind of funny because a lot of what was being said online about the movie wasn't good before it came out. And, there was this pirated copy that had found its way online
that's right.
30 days before. And one of my buddies had downloaded it, and he had made a copy for me. And I was like, oh, you know what? Screw it. I'll watch this with, the unfinished version. And I was like, this has to be a joke. This feels like a fan edit. It looks terrible and whatnot. So there's no way they did this at all, And then, lo and behold, when it comes out, I didn't buy it on DVD. I didn't go see it at the movie theater. But my buddy had gone to see it at the movie theater, and he was like, it's the same thing. The effects kind of look okay. And so I was like, oh, no. So I never really bothered to watch the finished version until, I don't know, 2012 or something like that, where I was like, I'm going to go through, the X-Men things, and I'll pop in, X-Men Origins Wolverine. And I saw with, the final effects, and I was like, this is not good. And then there was today. I actually finished watching it 15 minutes before coming online with you guys. I've been putting it off all week, but I was taking notes as I was going on because this is the weird rabbit hole I went down. I was like, you know what? I wanted to kind of make it funny, to have really intellectualize the film to show that they actually knew what they were doing. And I started reading up on philosophy and the hyper real and whatnot. And I started talking with one of my friends yesterday, Carrie, and she was like, I don't think that this applies to it at all. And I was like, I know, right? And so I ended up spending a lot of time doing research and trying to be smart about it. And then I figured, you know what? I can't do this. There's such a little time delay, and I hadn't watched it again until that point. And so I was like, screw it. I'll just throw all my philosophy crap out the window, and I'll just go for a straight-up interpretation of the movie. But based on how the movie is structured itself, if you were just really paying attention to the movie and how everything works, you can connect the dots, that Logan himself is dealing with multiple personalities after being sick, and that you add to that he's suffering from PTSD after committing accidental patricide. And so I was kind of like, that's kind of interesting, because Victor seems to be his alter ego throughout the entire movie, is that he's not really there. And so, Lee pointed out, all these lives to me are him restarting, coming back from PTSD, reliving certain moments, and trying to figure out after his fragmented self where the hell he fits into the picture. Because they do roughly skip through 30 years without actually seeing anything.
Yeah, blink.
Yeah. He goes from being a kid to World War II, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
War general.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Holy shit. I mean, I thought about something. I did a similar thing to Jason as well, where I was like, maybe I should over-intellectualize this. Maybe I should really bring it hard and some fucking crazy crackpot nonsense. And I did have the idea that because of those exact lives, I took a different offshoot there and went for maybe this is the story of reincarnation.
Yeah.
That belief. And that I was going to make this whole complex, get all the tenets of reincarnation as that's Hindu, right? And or is it Buddhism? I can't remember.
One of them.
Terrible religions. Yeah, that's a nice generalization. That's But for who? But for who? Yeah. So I was thinking about like pinning down all the tenets about what you have to do with relation to karma and so on, how that factors into reincarnation, and then try to play off like the decisions and statements that Wolverine makes, and oddly how contradictory he becomes, being a part of the fact that he is technically like the same person in a different body each time, therefore that affects who he is. I was going to make a huge fucking sweeping, wide-scale, stupid trip for us all, but yeah, just, you know, if I had a drinking game, it'd be more apt.
Yeah, well, I went down your route. I have it all detailed.
Thank God.
I watched some of the extras on the disc to see if that would give me some enlightenment.
Oh,
as to
lucky
the
you!
thought
I
process.
downloaded a copy of this filthy fucking thing.
There was
Nope.
there was an interesting discussion between Stan Lee, who I think created the X-Men, and then the guy that specifically created Wolverine. And apparently the whole reason why Wolverine was created was for the Incredible Hulk to have a good adversary. And Stan Lee was just like, but the Hulk would win. He would just pummel Wolverine instantly. And the guy was like, but Wolverine can heal. And Stan Lee was like, oh yeah, good point. And it was fun watching these like two old guys who had created these things having the sort of discussion that you would find in a playground when this sort of movie would come out. But it didn't really give me any enlightenment as to why this movie exists in the way it does.
Yeah, why this is a disaster, but
yeah,
a good insight into, you know, why Twitter is a disaster.
Yeah.
You've forgotten what it was all about, people. It was all about just like, whoa, but he's got iron skin, so he can't be hurt, and like, oh, that's so cool, but my guy has extra big lasers, and that's what's super fun about that. But no, it's like your Wolverine is a fundamental, criminal in the eyes of the moral society.
While you guys were talking about the like PTSD and multiple personalities and that stuff, I've had a realization, right? At the end of the film, they specifically say we cannot kill Wolverine by shooting him, but if we shoot him in the head, we will. His memories don't heal, right? Mm-hmm. So we either have to assume that in the 100, however long he's been alive, he's either never been shot in the head, or he definitely has been shot in the head. We've seen him be shot by groups of people. So it is entirely possible that the Wolverine we're seeing in all those different times is a completely new, or a relatively new person, in that they've been shot in the head, him and Victor, and lost memories and shit.
Yeah, it had to be adamantium bullets, though.
No, but that's only because he has adamantium.
There you go.
Yeah. And before then, he doesn't.
Oh,
if you
that's
shoot him in the
right.
head when he's bone, you're good.
Yeah.
So
there you go. That's tying into Jason's
possible.
theory right now. It's beautiful. You've done it, Ellie. You've
they
found
might
the
have been
thread.
geniuses.
Literally, yeah. We opened they're at the front of that firing squad just before the credits at the start, and that's literally that's like the motif throughout the film, is that he's already been a broken man before, and now he's a broken man again.
Holy shit!
Sets the tone. It's incredible.
That was the excuse I had for the bad CGI. I was like, it's not bad CGI. It's just if you look at how people's memories work, nothing is really in focus ever, you know. So he's imagining all these things happening to him. It's these giant illusions that Wolverine's creating around, you know, certain situations in order to kind of wrestle with the personalities that he has. You know, all those mutants that are in that team are different facets of his personality. He's going to go this way. He's going to attack this type of thing. That's why he dies at one point, and then Victor shows up again. You know, he goes to sleep at night, and then he wakes up. You know, let's say Victor, when he kills Bradley at one point, Bradley dies, but then Wolverine wakes up at another place, and you're like, oh, maybe he's dreaming about this. Or even with Kayla wakes up with scratches on her arm, and, you know, you could actually say that, oh, Victor is probably the alter ego, the same way that the Hulk is, you know, with Bruce Banner, and that Wolverine, when he falls asleep, he actually becomes Victor, and he actually accidentally kills Kayla without even realizing it, you know, but he's blaming it on Victor the entire time, which is kind of fun, because you're like, well, there's precedent there for him waking up in the middle of the night and actually maybe close to killing her. Maybe this is what's happening again. He's actually running through a forest just before that as well. And the way that they shoot it, this is just to show how shitty he does this. He films Logan leaving off screen heading towards the right, which means that he's supposed to be heading towards the future. But then after that, the shot, once you see Victor and Kayla, he misses the shot, and he puts it like Logan's running from right to left, which means that he's heading back towards his past. So he's trying to right some sort of wrong at that point. If you look at the cinematic language of it, and you're like, oh, so he is wrestling with the demons of the past. So Victor is part of his past as well, and he's trying to do something with that. That's for sure. But it's kind of a weird thing because I feel like he puts himself through the Weapon X program in order to fight the alter ego, in order to fight Victor. Because they say Victor is indestructible. They can't do anything about it. But at the same time, if you look at all the experimental treatments that they had for multiple personalities and PTSD and all that stuff, this is probably one of those things where they're trying to give him a lot of stuff to work with. And so, in essence, that makes Stryker the hero of the film, which is kind of fun, if you want to look at it like that. Because I was comparing this to Slaughterhouse-5 by Kurt Vonnegut, where Billy Pilgrim invents this world called Tralfamadore. After like the firebombing of Dresden, he comes back to reality after World War II, and he can't deal with it, and so he has to invent this sci-fi world for him to kind of go off into like Peter Pan. And I feel like Wolverine inventing the whole Weapon X program is him kind of going off to his Tralfamadore, where he's like, this is where I'm going to have it, And when he liberates the mutants all at the end, those are all little other facets of his personality that he could have, which culminate in the ultimate villain, which are a combination of every single one of the characters we've met throughout the film, except for the Blob, right? And so he's like, basically Wolverine's taking on himself, but at the same time, he's battling his alter ego at the same time as he's fighting Deadpool. And at the end, when they separate, Sabretooth goes his own way, Victor goes his own way, and Logan stays there. And it's kind of him making peace with the fact that he's become one again after defeating all the other personalities. And so I thought it was kind of
then that's when he doesn't know who he is at the end, because he's never lived a life where he's had it all connected.
Yeah, and so like, you see shots of him in the mirror kind of exploring a little bit of what's going on. That's the boxing match in the middle of the film is at the 60-minute mark, where I thought it was cool. And so, I mean, he's there renegotiating with the other aspects of his personality to see who's going to be the alpha and take control to go off and fight Victor. And so that was kind of really fun. So yeah, so that was my take on that. It's a really poor thing, but I mean, the fact that he goes and falls asleep, we see him as a kid killing his father, being shot at, Victor's there to help him, but we could also say that Victor, he's never really shown on screen at the same time. He's always opposite him, at the beginning of the movie. And plus he's sick, so, a lot of bedridden kids, I read this online before coming on the show, so top-notch research. They encourage kids that are kind of going through these rough times, especially when they're bedridden because they're sick and whatnot, to use their imagination to kind of keep their spirits up. And I figured that, you have a very young Logan in the year 1800 whatnot, just kind of trying to imagine what kind of a world it would be where he could be a guy who's not sick, who could heal a lot, and what would it take to get through all this. And so he's basically mapped out his entire life in order to deal with what he's actually dealing with. And he never really left the bed at the beginning of the movie.
Wow.
Holy shit.
So all this happens in the young boy's head.
That is some tight 5 minutes of research.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Jason, were you lying about having finished 15 minutes before we started? Because that is impressive.
No, I was literally, I texted Lee. I was 15 minutes before, yeah. I was sitting there going like, but I have my notes. I can show you the time on my...
No, I believe you. That's just insanely good. I was sitting there like, I don't think I can argue with this because I now sort of believe it. I might rewatch Wolverine Origin and be like,
yeah, it might.
Holy shit.
I mean, it goes also with how they edit the movie together. At one point, Logan is missing his jacket, and so he kind of appears in a place, just like how Deadpool can disappear and reappear, just like Bradley and Bolt can do the same thing. And so he's changing clothes at places, and so you kind of can pick it apart and be like, maybe this was the whole thing all along. I doubt it. I think it's a terribly made movie, but you could probably... It's like that chair disappearing in the back of Jack Nicholson in The Shining, where you're like, oh, he probably planned that. Nah, maybe not. We don't know. Yeah. He's dead now. We don't know. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in the movie that kind of goes with that, and I thought it was really, really fun to just sit there and be like, all right, how do we make this one smart?
Yeah. Well, you've done it well.
Yeah. More than admirable job. Jesus Christ. But you also brought up, in passing, by accident, 2 new drinking game rules. So obviously, take a drink, or you could make this a shot. I mean, everybody could kill themselves if they really wanted. So it's power's in your hand. But take a drink anytime they bend backwards to tie their contrived plot into X-Men 1 and 2. which was brought up when we were talking about the memories and their inability to heal.
Yep.
Is just the most convenient of like, well, that will explain why you can't remember because he got shot in a very like you can't just heal memories.
He got shot right in the memory.
That's yeah exactly. Because when you regrow things and they function exactly as they did before, that's not a form of memory at all. But then there's a I did it for my son. That's contrived from Stryker.
Yep.
Trying to tie that in. Scott meeting Xavier is contrived as balls.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. This is the day we met, and like you know, it's like he singles him out as the leader. Like Scott, lead these people. It's me, Scott. And like, who the fuck are you, magic voice? Just trust me. A crazy voice in my head is telling us.
Why does he bother mind speaking to him when all those other kids are just going to be standing there being like, "This is terrifying." There's a scary guy who just turned up.
Two separate scenes where Emma Not Frost says, "Are you sure we should be following the voice in your head?" And he's like, yeah, sure.
But see, that's another thing that points to maybe all the personalities that Wolverine has. Are we supposed to be following everything? You know, the fact that Wolverine is following all these voices in his head, maybe we shouldn't be doing that. Maybe we should have just stayed
shut our
in bed.
eyes. We should shut our eyes and listen to old men in our heads.
There you go.
The young man at that time, CGI young man. And of course, convenient Sabretooth goodbye. Luckily, they wrapped up all their unfinished words to each other before. Like, we'll go our separate ways. Together, we're done, and we're never going to talk again. And then he loses his memory, so conveniently, the next time they see each other, he's a snarling weirdo with nothing to say.
Yeah. We settled this, didn't we?
Yes. I've never seen this man before in my life. So, the other one is every time, take a drink every time the film fails to make something look cool.
Yeah.
Which ties into the CGI clause and such that Jason was saying, which includes, the clause, of course, first off, especially the bathroom scene, which is one of the sloppiest pieces of shit I've ever put to like big budget cinema.
Have they ever said why? Because in the X-Men 1, 2, and 3, didn't they use prosthetic claws?
It was a mix.
Half and half.
Like this one, it was a mix. But the thing this time around is that they had to dish out the production for CGI to, I think they said it was either 7 or 17 different production companies. Just whoever got wrapped up with the claws that day just had a bad go at it.
Yeah,
to be fair, a lot of these these scenes were filmed just additionally and shit like that. And you can understand why this was the last thing to be shot, and then they were just like, throw some CGI on it, make it a scene.
Do you, on your list of the drinking game, do you have any they run and charge at each other?
I think I do. If you're talking about Logan and Sabretooth especially running and charging
always
on
run and
each
charge.
other.
That's the way they start a fight. I understand that it looks better than just walking up and slapping someone, but at the same time, there has to be a different way where you can, start an action scene. It's like
I think that's a more fleshed out way of filling in my drink every time Logan and Victor fight, because then you only get 3 drinks.
Okay.
So if you want to drink every time someone charges at someone, and I mean Wolverine, like he charges at helicopters, he charges at the Bob from above, he charges at Gambit. There's charges all over the place.
The yelling?
Yelling's on here somewhere. I'll have to figure it out. It might be just one to itself. He yells every time he yells, or anyone yells. Take a drink. Other times that things that don't look cool, that they should have, include chopping down that ladder in the alleyway.
That's brilliant.
Oh my god!
It's one of the funniest looking. Like it looks like Wallace and Gromit, like proper like Aardman animation. It's fucking hilarious. Like stop motion. It's terrible. It's really out of place. Gambit's 2 leaps. He has two crazy leaps.
The helicopter. Where he does the little helicopter stick spin, amazing.
From a building that he like climbs up off screen, like climbs up
with
to the top of a building.
Yeah, that was weird. What the hell is that?
Cut to last we seen him, he was lying on the ground in the alleyway, and he was just like, you know what? I'm going to climb that ladder over there, and I'm going to do a running jump, all just to get right back to where the fuck I was in the first place. And then the other one, it's like ending in the beautiful "Did you miss me?" line.
Yeah, just jumps out of nowhere.
He saves Logan from the falling nuclear plant.
Yeah.
Which is, it's just like, oh yeah, that's right. We forgot we did write this character in.
Comes straight from Logan's imagination.
He had a moral. Yeah, it's beautiful. There's also the lightning. There was the scene when Logan leaves the Vietnam group for being morally dubious. They're all grouped together in a team shot, and there's just like a cha-cha. Yeah, exactly. A flash of light, like whoa. I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to feel from that. Like,
music doesn't work with it either.
Is it sad? Like, the guys look pretty beat up that he left. They actually look pretty put out. So I don't know, like, are they going to get revenge, or are they just like, this is the end for them?
I have a theory. I think that there was an on-set photographer that day, and he forgot to turn off his flash.
They're just like, yeah, put up under.
I was like, oh shit, we can't shoot that again. We have everyone here.
Was it just me that noticed? I think it's when the agent guy is running away at one point or chasing.
X or
he does like a backflip over a fence, but it just doesn't make sense because the physics of a backflip are that you go backwards, but he's jumping.
Yeah, it jumps
forwards.
Flips backwards.
Yeah, that looked really weird.
It didn't it really took me out of the movie for a second. I was like, how did Maverick do that?
Yeah.
Or Agent Zero, they call him. That's
yeah.
Maverick was But I was.
Yeah, they just for the one Asian actor in the film, they give him like kung fu physics. It's kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are moments like that constantly throughout, but I didn't bother writing them down. just like subtly racist shit. But maybe a little drab. Well, the other things that aren't cool, Sabretooth as a whole is not cool.
Oh, I liked Liev Schreiber in that one, man.
Oh, I know. I think he's a good actor. I think he did a good job.
Oh, okay.
Of what the fuck he was given, but I mean, they tried to make him threatening, or every time he's like, "Here are my claws."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like,
the claws
he just
are.
kind of. It looked like a tired pedo. Like,
it's like Saruman on top of the fucking crystal ball. And
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But didn't you think that that was the funny thing about Sabretooth in the opening sequence, which should have been the movie. Let's face it, the wars, that should have been the entire movie. But Schreiber goes from gutting people to a rapist by the end, and I was like, that's a pretty steep fucking... how are you like, it's like, well, what's the most cliched thing we could find from every war? Oh, the rape in Vietnam. That's the one we're going to go for. And you're like, I don't know, why would he? That doesn't seem like, he doesn't seem interested in women other than that. It's just a...
It's
if
weird.
anything, he's got a super homoerotic relationship with his half-brother, and that's about the height of it.
His alter ego.
I don't know what oh, yeah, that's it. He has a love affair with himself.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
And also, like... That's one of those telling, like, that was in the R-rated version, and then they kept it in the 12A version? It's really fucking bizarre.
You mean Wolverine and Sabretooth having sex?
No, they cut that. But, the Vietnam rape was what the fuck.
Yeah.
Other uncool things, the CGI logs was one thing that Jason brought up as well. One of the funniest, like, for the bump.
And the scene just before
cut
that.
CGI over.
Did you notice, like, there was a truck that literally drives by, hits Wolverine, and doesn't bother stopping. The truck just keeps going. Anybody who hits anything on the road is going to get out and stop. It would have been an innocent bystander. He could have gotten killed or something like that, but no, it's like,
Yeah.
well, fuck it, there goes that deer. Who gives a shit?
That's the Canadian outback.
Why the deer was wearing a wife beater.
Totally different laws of the land. And of course, the only other thing that should have been somewhat cool and wasn't was, of course, Deadpool. He is one of the least cool things ever put to cinema. Yeah. Try hard. He has all the powers. And therefore it makes him extra cool. It's like they never learned anything from the terrible 90s Marvel already had went through in the comics about try hard, make everything cool, make Batman, Wolverine, etc., and go like, maybe this isn't cool. Maybe this is desperate and sad.
See, I actually... When I first watched it, I didn't really know who Deadpool was, so I didn't quite pick up on...
Yeah, it didn't bother me at the time either.
Bothered me.
Watching it again, I quite liked that beginning sort of bit where you had the team working together, and I kind of wish that there'd been a bit more of that team dynamic instead of just immediately disbanding.
Yeah,
like it should have been the film, for example.
yeah.
I mean,
with the Deadpool thing, that first bit with Deadpool was like the moment that loads of people were like, "Oh shit, Ryan Reynolds is a good Deadpool."
Yeah.
And then it's because that's the issue, or at least that's the issue I have, and I seem to remember it being the main issue that a lot of people had with the Deadpool in it. Is it's not the beginning bit of Deadpool. That's fine. It's a bit over the top with the like blocking every bullet with his sword and whatever. But fuck it, it's an action film. I live with it. But it's the end scene where you're like, you've taken this character that a lot of Marvel fans genuinely love, and you've done the one thing to him that no one should ever do to Deadpool, which is sew up his fucking mouth. I get that it's the joke in the film, but like, it's just the wrong thing to do to Deadpool.
But that's the funny thing is that there's exposition when it comes to that as well, where I feel like Ryan Reynolds being Deadpool, everyone who knew Deadpool was like you said, it's fantastic, he's talking. However, we know him as the merc with a mouth. And they keep saying that Wade talks a lot, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
No. And then you're like,
to.
you know, oh, that fucking mouth of yours is going to get you in trouble. And you're like, he said 3 lines, dude. What the fuck? It doesn't make any sense. And when he's sharpening his sword, you know, and I was like, it's just one of those things where you're like, it doesn't seem all right. And did you guys, what happened to Ryan Reynolds' voice? It was low in this movie, but when you watch the Deadpools now...
What do you mean? He has to like whisper each of his lines. Like, this is what I mean when I'm playing Deadpool. This is my voice.
Yeah, but then when you watch the new Deadpool movies, he's all like, you know, his voice goes up like, and you're like, oh, I don't know what happened. Is he
like a character?
Yeah, exactly. That could be it. But anyway, it was really, really funny. I was like, he's not saying anything. Why are you guys keep repeating like, do you ever shut up? And it was like, he's quiet the minute right after. Yeah. He was quiet just before. You know?
I found. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say he's being bullied. Everyone's bullying Deadpool. That's the real story of this. Is Wade Wilson in this film is actually just fine. Everyone should like him, and all his mates are like, "No, shut up, Wade. You talk too much."
So
and he's
cool.
like, "I'm not saying anything."
Deadpool origins. This is terrible. Where's his film? Where's his justice? in that period of time where things were terrible. What did I have? I found the drinks every time Logan yells. You could expand that to every time somebody yells, because lots of people yell. Also, one of the things that came to mind there: drink every time Will.i.am delivers an amazing quote. Since we're talking about the gang. Because Will.i.am, who is potentially the worst of the bunch in the film, is probably my favorite part, and it's because he is the bar. He is like you can't go lower than this. But they also conveniently give him all the best lines, and by that I mean all the ones that like are just the worst, and then he delivers them terribly, and that skyrockets them into like this thing. Like, I still quote a bunch of them, and I picked up a few more this time around. So I have 4, but you can drink every time one of these comes up. There's that's cool. Which is great. It's like the least cool thing. And oh god, what was it? Don't dogs kill cats? It's like, do they?
Yeah, I noticed that. I was like, wait, what? Like they chase them? Yeah.
Yeah. They're like that. There's animosity. They're different animals.
Yeah.
But it's like, do dogs kill cats? Like, not regularly.
No, not at all. This guy's been watching too many cartoons.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. My favorite of all time, of the entire film, in fact, is you shouldn't have done that because now I'm gonna kill you.
And he's standing next to him and he's barely moving. He's just got his, and you're like, oh my god!
Dukes up.
It's when you realize that Will.i.am has never been in a fighting stance ever before in his life. You could tell from there that he's never thrown a punch ever. He's just kind of standing there. Like almost like his thumbs would be on the inside of his fists, where you're like, "Meh."
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was like, "Oh God, that means I could take down Will.i.am in a fight. That would be awesome."
It's it makes me laugh every time. I think about that quote all the time. Shouldn't have done that. 'Cause now I'm gonna kill you. now I'm gonna kill you.
The
terrible.
backbone.
It's like one of the worst. Like it's like so poorly delivered. It's like, oh yeah, he's a real fighter. And this is the last one I realized that I never heard before was when they're all together at the very start of the film, and he teleports next to the guy who has the adamantium, and he says, "I wouldn't do that if I was you, brother." Like, ooh, that's good writing. They're black.
Oh god, yeah. Do you have any? Did you have any
yes.
shots for the leftover shots from Jurassic Park?
No.
Okay.
What's that?
That helicopter sequence when they're heading over towards the Weapon X facility at Alkali Lake. You could.
Oh yeah, when they like zoom in that waterfall.
That
and
stuff, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this looks like it was shot like a. I was like, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
be
throw in
real
a
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park reference in there, and I was like, all right, that's kind of.
That's what I thought too. I didn't write it down, but I was thinking like, what are they going for? Is this like establishing, or are they
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Like,
I was
we
like,
found a
is
waterfall,
this supposed to be like-
and man, do I love Jurassic Park.
Exactly. I was expecting the song to kick in, but I mean, you just see the helicopter, and you're like, okay, there's no music. Is this an act transition? What's going on? What are we supposed to get from this? I was like, okay, we're just watching a helicopter. Okay, fine. Let's see where it fits in.
Incredible. So what do you guys think of Logan himself in the film? Like, how do he strike you? His Hugh Jackman's best performance, his worst performance.
I think to be honest, this sheds a lot of light on Logan as well, the film.
In that the moment they took all the reins from Hugh Jackman and give it to like credible like writers and directors, that it suddenly started to open up a little bit.
Yes, that, but also the character arc is pretty much the same. Logan has to go into a facility to free a bunch of kids in order for them to leave. He gets shot at the end, he dies somewhat, and then he resurrects. And I was like, that's kind of weird. We're going through the same fucking beats again, with what we were talking about on our review of Logan, where we were like, we've seen this film before with this guy, and so I thought it was kind of a strange one to go back and revisit, because I was like, I think I've seen this movie before. Oh right, it came out in 2017 again.
I remember the Drunken Haze from 2010. It was great. I did watch this film. I remember now.
It's Logan's savior again. You know what I mean? He just basically the liberator of mutants. He's the guy who goes in and solves everything. I don't know.
And it's funny as well when they got that R rating. The one thing they stripped from this film, that they give it to Logan as well. It did make the difference. Like, Logan could have been a okay X-Men Origins version without the super graphic violence, but that added entertainment that you'd get from like visceral and creative ways to tackle fight scenes really adds an additional layer to the film that makes it super enjoyable compared to, say, Wolverine Origins, where it's a bunch of people slapping and tossing each other around and nobody gets hurt.
I mean,
for almost
you do see
90% of the fights
in Origins. You do see him like pull his claws out of bodies, and they're just completely clean. So they have the stabbing, they just don't really emphasize the effectiveness of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It just feels like, I've been like, it's like a pin in my chest.
Yeah.
Like that's gonna sting for hours.
Do you think that the boy at the beginning of X-Men Origins Wolverine grows up to be the same guy who's sick in Logan? That's kind of funny because
oh my god,
you bookend all that. He starts sick and ends sick.
You brought up one of my favorite drinking game rules. By mere coincidence, every time an actor was recast in another superhero film, and he's one of them. I've got the whole list, a wide list. Young Logan, I believe, turned out to be new Nightcrawler in Apocalypse.
Okay. Oh shit! Okay.
Yeah. So other people, Reynolds, obviously Deadpool. Danny Huston became the whatever you call the film from Wonder Woman. Liev Schreiber is apparently cast to be a voice in the upcoming animated Spider-Man film coming out at Christmas.
There you
go. So there you go. He's still around. Scott Adkins, who was the stunt actor for Deadpool, was something that I for some reason didn't write down. But look that up. Whoa. When he comes on screen, take a drink. Daniel Henney I can't remember who this guy is, but he of course he's Agent Zero. It was also the voice of the bigger brother in Big Hero 6, which is a Marvel adapted property via Disney Animation. And Tim Pocock, who is the young Cyclops, is about to star in the new upcoming Marvel series Runaways. So there you go. Then you could drink all those weird, convenient recasting of people who didn't get a fair shake when Origins crashed and burned on release.
At least so many of them are getting a second chance.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's all about new lives, new lives.
Failing
upwards. They've all regenerated.
I have two things left, and then after that, I'm gonna close out my whatever I had. I have two things that I really liked about the movie. One of them is that Stryker literally writes "decapitate" in the computer. I thought that was awesome. Decapitate, and I was like, I've never seen decapitate spelled on screen for me so well. I was like, that's pretty cool. And it's exactly what happens to Deadpool.
Did not notice that.
Yeah,
he gets decapitated. And my favorite line in the whole movie, there's one line that sticks out for me, and it's, "I'm Canadian." Because that hit home. If Wolverine is one of those guys that represents Canada, well, that's awesome. We're proud of X-Men Origins up here.
You better be. Filmed in Australia. I've got a couple more drinking game things, but if anyone wants to stop me from talking for a little while,
man,
I contribute something of their own thoughts. Alright, so you can take a drink anytime an offhand reference to the comics is shoehorned in, regardless of context or tone or sense. So, say Logan's motto, I'm the best at what I do. What I do is not very nice. Is like they're awful to listen to when said aloud.
Exactly. Yep.
And it's just one of the cringiest things I've ever seen in a film. There's quote unquote the pool,
yeah.
which Stryker references like we needed powers for the pool. Like, oh, that's desperate. Gambit as a whole is just like there's this guy. His name, where he gets his name, is fucking stupid. It's like, he gets it because in the prison they used to run a poker night and he would win all the money, and that's why they called him Gambit. Like, well, that's good. And then there's Blob, who this is the bub thing again.
Yeah.
The Wolverine's name in itself is one of the most contrived and bizarre fucking origin things that without context, and it's just one of the most embarrassing stories I've ever heard reiterated. Like about the fucking there was a trickster and you got tricked and you lost your girlfriend because of him.
Yeah.
That person was the Wolverine.
Yep.
My favorite thing is when he brings it up again. He doesn't actually change who he is in it, but he says like, "I'm just the poor bastard who got tricked." But in the story, he related to the poor bastard who got tricked in the first place. The poor bastard who got tricked was the Wolverine.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? So like at the end, he's like, "I thought I was your." Whatever it was, even though he calls himself Wolverine and gets it on his dog tags, he's like, "I thought I was your moon, but it turns out I'm the Wolverine," even though he like adopted that name like an hour and a half ago.
Yeah, that was a funny thing when you mentioned the trickster. I was like, oh, there you go. I can actually make a whole analysis based on fairy tales, and it would fit in with the fact that this guy's creating this world. Oh, so you're the trickster. It's one of those elements that he didn't think about, you know. It's because the trickster figure is like Puck and Shakespeare and whatnot is this one thing that throws everything for a loop, and then it has to be mended by the end. And so I was like, oh, look at that. We could actually look at that as you know, if she's the trickster figure and she's found in the forest and she's some sort of forest nymph, and you can kind of build a whole theory based on that as well. And so I was like, aha, I got another in.
Was it the last, when we did the Godzilla King Kong thing, did you also bring up fairy tales in that episode?
Yeah, it was the hero's journey.
Yeah.
That's right. I was just I had like Vietnam flashbacks right there about everyone in this conversation sitting like, here we go. The trickster that came up, I think.
Yeah.
I remember a wizard. Okay, another drink. Every time Logan contradicts himself, in a grand statement where it tells people how edgelord his ambivalence to morality is. He just continually updates people about how he's feeling, including the time he said he should have trusted his instincts, then immediately turns around and doesn't trust them and goes back to his manipulative wife. There's his stance on the word. He has this terrible moment with the Kents, where he says,
I call them the Kents too in my notes.
Fuck their names.
I called them Ma and Pa Kent. I did the same thing.
Yeah, they are Ma and Pa Kent.
Yep.
They even give them his jacket.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah,
theory.
exactly. He hands him a
Their son
blanket
was
first, just
Superman.
like they handed to Superman.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They tried to make him Superman. He's like, in a conversation with them, he's like, decent, huh? You know, like, as if he doesn't know the word decent, and it's like, what the fuck, you bitch?
It's funny. I forgot this is the other point I wanted to make. There's an actual dinner the same way as there is in Logan, where the fucking family gets destroyed. It's the same
also
fucking
true.
thing.
Another kindly family takes him in and dies at his behest.
I was actually...
It's a remake.
I was quite sad by that bit, because even though they hadn't been on screen for very long, I was like, oh, I like this couple.
Yeah, they're a beam of light.
Yeah.
That's just because that's like the old-fashioned edgelord comics of the 80s. They would introduce like kindly people and just murder them to make you feel something, you desensitized bastards.
Lee, we have to write that script.
Which
X-Men
one?
Origins, Ma and Pa Kent. And we'll make it for Liam.
Thank you.
You have to find those same actors.
Yeah, they actually like their par was inviting strangers into their house and inventing jackets out of the air. For
Yeah,
them.
exactly.
Like,
Giving them motorcycles.
they never had a son. They just like they're like they are the tricksters. New theories. Anyway. Yeah, shit like saying like the road we're on has no redemption after it. Like, oh fuck yourself. It's just shit like that. He always constantly updating people about like this job is a dark one and my life is miserable and it's just not earned at all. And it constantly like, so every time he brings it up, you have to drink because it's the only way you're going to get through it. It's like, we're hitting the road and I don't expect to come back. And when Paul Kent tells him, men that go looking for blood, they find it. You know,
It's a great line.
It's just like, Jesus, come on. We'll take a day off with the fucking intellectualizing, quote unquote. Yeah, so also take a drink every time Logan and wife Silver Fox make life intolerable for people who are watching it. So just every couple of seconds when they're on screen, take a drink because they're like the worst written couple of all time. You can take a drink every time Logan switches from hard-ass killer to dramatic soppy mess.
Yeah.
Which is like a bipolar thing.
Yeah.
You could tie that into Jason's reading a little bit. That he becomes Sabretooth every now and then back to Wolverine, then back to Sabretooth. And that's usually when Sabretooth is not around, so you can tie that in. Anytime a fight starts to rescue screenwriters from writing any more terrible dialogue, i.e. every single time Logan and Sabretooth fight, and also the time Logan fights that logger guy.
Oh, right,
has
the guy
an
with the hand on
incredible
the shoulder.
Yeah, who has an incredible quote in the like fucking 2 seconds he has on screen. He blurts it out. And it's like, you start something, you better run it. Sorry.
And who does that? Who blocks the
starts
road
up-
just for like,
Yeah.
you know, on a fucking bridge
Yeah.
either? Like, what kind of asshole is that? You know what I mean?
He's so unreasonably mad when Logan's like, "Could you please move?"
It's
He's just like,
escalates.
"How?"
Clips in the fucking bird.
One to violence. It's crazy. And he's like, you start something, you better be ready to finish it. And he like blurs that together in one line, like before he throws the punch. Like, start something, you better be ready to finish it. It's like, is this guy like, is he trying to make a moral? Who the fuck is this guy? Logger number 6.
It's just Logan just
What's
is
his
so
problem?
polite when he walks up to him. Hey pal, do you mind just moving your truck?
Yeah.
And the guy just flips like goes.
I'll kill you.
That reminded me,
Wait for me to finish conversation. You better start to finish something.
like, another line I absolutely hated is when you have Sabretooth sat in the bar and Wolverine is coming for him and he's like,
Yeah.
to the barkeep, have you got insurance? It's like, no. He's like, oh, shame. Then all they do is just like blow out the door. I was expecting this bar to be like completely destroyed by
they
the
really
end.
build it up.
Yeah.
Like everybody evacuates, and then they toss him through a window, and then they're fighting outside
Yeah.
instead.
And-
It's so fucking anticlimactic.
How long did they take to build that set? Because to me, it's
That's
the
what I mean, that's
longest
insane.
bar I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
widest
Yeah.
bar I've ever seen with no fucking tables.
Yeah.
It's just a shot of Wolverine and you see Sabretooth, and there's just a bar with two dudes, a
Yeah.
barman,
Yeah.
and then you're like,
It's like a dance hall.
what the hell? But it must be that. That must be the thing. Thank you.
Yeah, repurposed as a bar.
Exactly,
But,
because
yeah,
it used
really
to be
is,
a dance hall. Okay, my
that's-
bad.
You hear that all the time. All the time. That, like, they build these sets, and then the director just says, I don't want to shoot it inside. And they're like, but we've had this plan for like 2 months. We had to build from scratch. And we had to renovate a barn into a bar. You know? And they're like, no, but outside you get the rain. It's more dramatic. It's a real action film that way. And it's like, oh, sweet Jesus Christ. All right, a couple more rules.
You know why they have it that
drink every
extended long thing then? Though? So they can run and charge it.
Of course.
It's the only
Take a
reason
drink.
it's that long. Because if
That's so
Wolverine
true.
goes to sit down, then it's an arm wrestling competition, and it's not fun anymore.
Jesus Christ. Every time Stryker seems ready to suck Wolverine's dick to get him to do anything, take a drink. Like, there's so
do
many
the
scenes
swallowing.
where he's just like, please! I'll do it, like, consider it, Logan. Your wife! What would she think? Anything, please! Let me inject you!
I have some of those things too. I can give you the tools to defeat him.
Exactly.
We'll make you indestructible, but first we have to destroy you.
That's right. He has one of my favorite. He has one of my favorite weird out of context lines as well, which is "Come on, old friend, come back."
That was, yeah, it's not a friend at all.
What the fuck?
Old friend.
Come on, like, and that's like in his private moment. That's actual character in depth. He actually believes Logan's his friend. It's insane. Like, what were they writing this for? Drink anytime Logan's contrived, barely explained super hearing is used or hinted at. It's like comes up about 3 times, and about 1 time they say, "I think he heard you," but every
Underwater
other
and
time it's
all
just
the
like
rest.
every other time it's just sort of understood that he can just hear you when you're around. Like, he can hear Sabretooth killing his wife and shit
Yeah.
like that. Like, what the fuck? Like, is this a par? It's never been established. Like,
No, he can sniff.
maybe
that's
it
the
was.
thing.
Maybe it was in one of the
Wolverine
other.
can smell.
Yeah, I
Never
remember
heard the
that.
hearing thing.
I never remember the hearing par. Like, but yeah, it just seemed really weird to me because they use it like 3 times.
Let's
So
change
they
orifices.
really, yeah, they really played up the ear par.
What can I quickly ask? Just maybe I just blanked it out when we rewatched this, but what was their plan with Wolverine when they covering him in adamantium? Did they have? Because I don't.
It was twofold.
Yep.
One, they needed to get his DNA to make the Deadpool.
Yep. Which you don't need to
Although
cover him in metal.
They have
to
a
get.
line later. Yeah, they have a line later saying that all we need is Logan. So it suggests that they didn't get his DNA when they had him sitting in their fucking lab.
Yep.
So I don't know what the fuck that they like improvise that plan later when it's least convenient. The other plan,
I think.
I think they just expected him to die.
Yeah, there was that. They conned him in by saying, "We're going to give you the tools necessary for you to beat Victor,
Yeah.
and in exchange, we get your DNA." And that's probably
then
what they were going to do. But like Lee says,
then
they was expecting him to die.
But I guess my question then is, if you're expecting someone to die,
Why are you
maybe
happy
come
if
up
you
with a
see
better way of doing it than, like, the process of them killing him is effectively, we're going to turn him into a super weapon, and hopefully it will go just that little bit further and he'll die. And then, like, the obvious thing happens where, no, he just becomes a super weapon.
And that's
Surely
funny,
you
because-
just
yeah.
drown
they
him
really-
in adamantium and be
Yeah,
like, cool,
they-
we're
Isn't that
good.
the come on old friend right
also,
after
like-
that too? It's like you're like, well, if you're expecting him to die,
It
why are
is,
you
it's in
encouraging
that
him to
scene.
live? Doesn't make any sense.
And the whole way up to it, they're like, "Come on, pull through," and it's like you need to focus on things that are really important for you to
Yeah.
live in this. And the whole time he's like got a clenched fist, like he has to make it. But I don't understand. Yeah, you're right, Ellie. It doesn't really. It's not really. It feels like they had a plot there for a little bit and then
Yes.
they lost it. My last drinking rule is every time Stryker's head doctor / nurse butts in with something negative. Yeah, so that was the last rule. That's the drinking game.
I think you've made a decent drinking game there that would definitely
I mean,
get
it's-
you too drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would be dead. You kind of have to tap out once you've gone to like your certain respectable limit and go, yeah, you know what? From here on, I'm just gonna raise my glass
in like a pity gesture. But I recommend absolutely 0% of people actually play the game, because it's just nitpicks summarized into passages.
You should make a grid of it, man. Let's Photoshop this whole thing together and make it like a real fun thing. And I want you to do one thing for me. I want you to add this really terrible pun. It would be the X-Men or Gins in all capital letter, where you have to exclusively drink gin with this game.
Oh god, it's gonna be lethal.
I can't even play my own fucking drinking game.
We did receive some correspondence about this. Well, so
my god,
Kat kind of live tweeted it while I was watching it last night.
Yeah, it was great. I saw.
Yeah, some choice highlights from it. Ha ha ha! The opening sequence is so bad. I feel bad for everyone involved. Followed by, why is there a rat on Liev Schreiber's shoulder though? Which, I mean,
because he's a rat, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that ties into my merciful
creepy and unsettling.
Yeah.
That's
Hugh Jackman is shirtless in the Canadian Rockies, except lol no, it's awful green screen, but damn them abs are real. Which I quite liked. Smells like government. What great dialogue.
Oh my god, that's right. That. Smells like government.
Yeah. And one thing that we haven't actually discussed, I'm surprised about, that Wolverine butt.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah.
The Wolverine butt.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I feel like we got to see it a couple of times in the previous X-Men films as well. I mean, he's been naked before, right? Or am I just thinking?
No, we've seen him come out of the tank, and I think we got a back shot then.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And we got to see it again in Apocalypse.
And then
we've
Kat tweeted another one that I love, where she quoted the film where she went, "Hey fat Fred, great save, Logan."
Oh, it's so good.
So good.
I mean, that's what I don't understand. What don't people have to enjoy about this film? Every single line is incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. I found if you want an explanation for the rat, and this just adds to the fact that I could dip into fairy tales. In folklore and popular culture, this is by the extremely well-researched Wikipedia page. Historically, the Rat King was viewed as a bad omen, and most likely due to rats being considered carriers of disease such as the plague. The fact that Sabretooth is the one that's taking out all of the other mutants makes him kind of a plague in the film. Therefore, the rat on the shoulder would be kind of foreshadowing the fact that he's the killer.
Perfect.
Fair enough.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
We also
Not really. Not in this movie.
A tweet from Markus at the Marco guy, just saying this will be interesting, which was in response to Jason tweeting about us talking about this.
I hope so, Markus.
Yeah.
Hope this is what you
This is
needed.
what you signed up for.
Yeah, I mean, you have to get through like probably a solid 2 hours of us just talking about my arse hair and shit like that first. But hopefully, you powered through and you got to what you wanted.
I'm sure Ellie could probably trim that down a little bit, pun intended.
No.
No.
So, are we going to rate X-Men Origins Wolverine out of 5?
Yeah, I think it's ratings
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah?
Shall I go first?
Go on, Eddie. You seem eager.
Well, it was going to be like a 2, but I've been slightly swayed by Jason's reading of it, and I'm going to have to rewatch it, and I think it's going to go up a bit, but I think it might be a 2.5.
Woo!
Just completely average.
Wow, Jason, you have the power to change minds. How do you feel about that superpower you supposedly didn't have?
This is all a delusion. I'm going to wake up in bed having stabbed my girlfriend accidentally.
This becomes admissible in court once that actually happens.
It's not if, it's once. I love it.
I know what I said.
I'm going to have to echo Ellie's rating, and I'm still 2.5. Like, it's not so terrible that I actively hate it. It's just about tolerable enough.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I mean, from a reasonable standpoint and a reasonable frame of mind, that's reasonable.
Yeah, I try.
What did I give X-Men Apocalypse? You know what? I think
it was an honorable mention in your
I think
top
it
10
gave it
of
like
the
a
year.
4.5 on 5, just because of the sheer camp of this movie. So yeah, I'd go with a 4.5 on 5 because it sets out to do something completely different, but I still have a fun time picking it apart. So this, to me, in terms of entertainment value, 4.5 on 5. In terms of like good movies, this is 11 on 5. This is fantastic. I don't rate things off. Is that how that works?
Everything goes up to 11. I agree. I would also rate it 4.5. I concede a 0.5 because it's just that there are some moments that are boring. Just some, Most of the time you're questioning the screen and you're going, what the fuck is happening? How did they get here? What is this? And that offers value, that offers laughs. But there's a couple of times where you know where you are and you're just like the actual story parts, like when Wolverine's in the tank, and other than the fact that Stryker is whispering hilarious sweet nothings to him, and also for the fact that one of the best sequences in the world is interrupted by one of the even better sequences in the world, which is one of my dog tags, Wolverine, and then there's like this fucking cutaway to like a stamping montage, and then like 5 minutes later, apparently they're that easy to make that he has it on his neck that same minute. It's like, it's super entertaining even in its most boring scenes. That's even when they're sitting in an office, Will.i.am and Logan chatting with each other, and they're just catching each other up in the plot. Will.i.am's acting is just so terrible that it's like, wow, this is unbelievably good watch. But there are, its core conception is a little dull, and I find that when I wasn't drunk, watching it this time, it was a bit of a slog to get through. I mean, maybe because I knew it too well.
Ultimately, does this film provide anything?
Yeah, laughs.
Well, no, but I mean, like if you're watching it as part of the X-Men franchise, because
we've covered everything the ground before.
Yeah. Like everything that happens is just redundant by the end.
Better
right?
not be bringing Han Solo up.
Wouldn't dream
of
it.
Your little shitty grin.
I think it's.
I wish I thought of that.
I think it's great to see an example of something like the two different disparate versions of Logan's story, like Logan and X-Men Origins, both being the exact same story, and one being like agreeably critically acclaimed, pretty good even if you didn't love it, and the other being this like disaster. And like it's kind of like a film student's dream, because then you can look at exact parallels between the two and realize what one person did right and what person did wrong. And therefore the value is that we get this deepest, darkest timeline version of Logan that came out actually before Logan, where they got to learn from their mistakes, that is filled to the brim with just like don'ts, start to finish. And they took that concept and they spun it, and they did it really well. They did it to the best it could be, and it was still like a 7. But I mean, it was good.
Yeah,
just look at
it. Just goes to show that all you need is swearing and blood.
Because I mean,
then you get an Oscar.
I just realized
a nomination.
I just realized that Logan versus Sabretooth in X-Men Origins Wolverine is exactly Logan versus X-24.
Yeah, Logan. That's right.
I was like, oh look, one's dressed in black. He must be the bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think you guys have managed to convince me. I understand, like, as opposed to arguing about your reviews, I think what you've said makes sense for the ratings you've given this film. So, I'm happy with this discussion.
Yes, we've done it.
Should we
finally? We've culminated our guest appearances so far.
Yep, exactly.
Into something where like both we made sense, and you see that we can make sense. That's
exactly.
Beautiful.
So, where can the people find you on the internet?
Well, you can find our podcast at Atlantic SC. Lee's the one that's controlling the Twitter now. Mine is Jason B. Michael.
I haven't written it in months.
Yeah. And
you've got a new YouTube page as well. I saw that was quite recent.
Right? Yeah, I let Lee talk about that because I don't. It's not a reflex of mine to do that, and I feel so bad because he put so much really awesome work into it. It took him like 6 months to make, and I don't pimp it enough.
Well, I mean, this is something that the nerds should know pretty well anyway, because they have their own YouTube page, which I follow and subscribe to, and should recommend to the lovely listeners to also subscribe there for them.
Thanks.
There. And that's not a shameless pandering plug. But Yeah, you guys use update like pretty regularly, and it's still taking you. You're still quite in the early episodes, and it's taking forever, and that's horrifying to watch. I was like, I love what they're doing though, and I feel that there's a reason, even though they're not getting like the views that they desire,
Yep.
and that I feel I should emulate that, and to the exact same results. I have made us a YouTube page with lovely little visualized episodes that you can listen to there. I mean, nobody's gonna do it, but it was for me.
Yeah.
So, if you want, you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go onto YouTube and look up Atlantic Screen Connection, search it in, and it'll come up almost assuredly.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly why I'm uploading our backlog. It's entirely for me. Ellie hates the fact that I'm doing it, but it makes me happy.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
good.
I just feel like I use YouTube,
Yeah.
and I would feel disingenuous to ignore it since it fills most of my entertainment day to day. So I mean, that's that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the show's on. The podcast itself, we talk more like what Jason did just there with his crazy crackpot theories. We do that every episode, more or less, and to usually similar degree of winging it and hoping for the best. So if you are interested in shit like that, just weird takes on films, that's why you should watch the show or listen to the show. It's on SoundCloud, iTunes, anywhere. And you can follow me at Lee Paul Brady. I talk a lot recently about screenwriting shit that I'm doing, as well as whatever other shit comes to mind. And Jason also has a Twitter.
And I already mentioned it, so that means you don't listen to me, you
Yep.
fuck.
Oh,
You can-
I thought you just said
follow me on
the
Instagram,
website
actually,
was.
at Jason B. Michael. I'll be posting a bunch of stuff there
Sweet.
throughout the summer. So that's probably
Sweet.
the better
Everyone-
place, and it's a little bit more positive too than actually following me on Twitter, where I'm consistently defending Star Wars from bitch ass trolls that won't shut the fuck up about their childhoods being ruined. So anyway,
Everyone should go follow both of you on all those social platforms.
Yeah.
Uh,
And listen to
Liam,
their
what are we doing
podcast.
next week? Because I'm aware that Jason has not got much time. So let's do this quick. We're doing God of War next week.
Yep.
People can tweet us at Nerd on Nerd. You can go to facebook.com/Nerd on Nerd Pod. You can email us at nerdonnerdpod@gmail.com. Give us a rating on iTunes. Go subscribe to these guys.
Go subscribe to our
Boom.
YouTube.
Subscribe to our YouTube. Subscribe to their YouTube. Sorted. Look at that.
Any final
Perfect.
thoughts?
That's incredible.
Anyone got any final thoughts?
I love you guys. It's always fun.
We
do
love
this
you
more
too.
There's so
Yes,
much
we
love.
should.
We
Absolutely.
should.
This is such
Yeah.
a good time.
often. We'll let you guys
I-
pick the film next time for Culture's Fun.
Oh, that seems
Oh,
fair.
that
That
could
seems
be
fair. It's about
interesting.
time.
And don't take
I think-
anything horror
I
though,
mean-
because I don't want to shit the bed, man.
What about Deathbed? The bed that eats people.
Come on,
You know,
man.
I've been longing to see that one.
No.
All right.
Alright.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye.